Is there anything else that you want to, I guess, shine a light on for our viewers and listeners so that they know that dyslexia can be beaten and that you're the man for the job?
Well, I just show you how, but what I want everybody to understand is you are one of the best among us. You've been starting to do doctoral level stuff in elementary school. I did that as well. Okay. One thing I want parents to understand is we should not put these kids through that hell. And when I said, honestly, if a mental health professional knew how bad this was, they would have taken you and literally put you in the mental emergency room. That's how severe this gets. We don't have to do it this way. I showed you how to do the basic sentences. I showed you how to do a more evolved body paragraph. We show parents to teach them how to do that. The person who does that for us, we're on a learning platform called School, SKOOL.com. Just put in dyslexia classes and you'll find us. The person who teaches this, her name is Angela. I met her she was a producer on another podcast. Her background is she is a certified elementary school teacher in the state of Texas with a master's degree and 10 years of experience. And then when her daughter was born, she became a homeschooling mom. She has taught her son, August, to go through this. She's there every week answering questions for an hour. And we make it affordable so parents can actually do this. And parents said, how long do we go? Well, we take parents, our most advanced student now is Grayson, and we take them all the way through going to publish a journal article. It will be rejected. Our goal is to get them past a desk rejection, rejected by a peer, and then we try to connect them up with a senior professor, and then they take it from there. Okay. So that's as far as we go. Most of the time we don't go that far. We usually end up at a senior thesis paper that's good for a college senior. And then they know what to do before they go to college. And here's the other little thing. Have you noticed that AI is kind of coming a little bit important? Okay. Give you a little hint. If you know how to do the craft of research, I don't care what happens to AI. You will be brilliant at it. And just so people know, when ChatGPT came out with that $200 a month pro plan, December of 24, I bought it that day. I'm one of those people that is more than 10xing my work. I do more than 10 times the work of a person my age with a master's degree. So it's something I spend a half an hour to an hour a day on, 7 days a week, just so I can keep up with it. So I can tell my kids how to do this. And it is changing so fast.
Hello, everyone. I am thrilled to introduce Russell, a dyslexia professor, a researcher who turned his own reading challenges into breakthrough, teaching methods, the method, into basically dispelling dyslexia. Russell worked with helping different avenues and different people with their potential and their growth through dyslexia, struggles, literary challenges. In short, this man is the man you need when you're having issues or your child is having issues with dyslexia. Russell, thank you and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Let's get right into it. Russell, on air, you mentioned your motto, from frustration to forever confident. Could you share a moment or moments of that story that you first realized that it was possible for you to, change your trajectory from dyslexia to what you are today?
Well, for me, it wasn't a choice. It was forced on me. It was late 90s.
Mm,
I wanted to know how laws were made, not a class, so I wanted to know. So I signed up for the New York State Assembly internship program. And I showed up and I give them my neuropsych evaluation. And it says, I have a first grade reading and writing level. I'm reading and writing like a 6-year-old. I literally
mm,
couldn't do the internship. The speaker's office made the decision that they didn't care about the cost, how hard it was going to be. They were going to accommodate the living daylights out of me and make this work. And they did. And it worked
mm,
brilliantly. But the accommodations were so massively extensive that when they sent it back, to the State University of New York Center at Buffalo's Political Science Department. They looked at the accommodations and looked at the recommended 15 credits of A minus. They said, we don't like these accommodations. So here's your 15 credits of F. They flunked me. Yes. And it was the speaker's office themselves that came up with these insane accommodations. Okay. So at that point, I did what everybody else in my position going back decades have said. I'm going to solve dyslexia. Well, I actually
Mm,
did. So what I did is I went to my professors and I said, where can I go to force myself to learn to read and write in graduate school? And they said, well, if you like politics, it's simple. Law school, where they read and write more than anybody. So I
mm,
went and audited, signed up for 2 audits in law school. And in my second day in contracts, I was called on. They use the Socratic method. And if you don't know the answer, nobody does the first week. They will ask you questions continuously that you can't answer to embarrass you publicly until you eventually adapt. I didn't do that. I didn't respond as a student. I responded as my professor's equal. And he was a law
mm.
professor longer than I was alive. He went after me. I went after him. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. He threw up his arms and said, Russell, you couldn't be any more correct. In the interest of time, I have to move on to the next case. I learned to read within a month. I learned to write within a couple of years. Then I go back to the New York State Senate. And I said, I want you to fund my dyslexia research program. I solved dyslexia. And they said, this sounds interesting, but you have to go through the New York Education Department. I had to go through all of this. That took a couple of years. And then we were funded for a multi-year study at the Averill Park Central School District, my old high school, right outside of Albany, New York, our state capital. I wanted to focus on students like me initially. These were incredibly intelligent, super motivated dyslexic students who were juniors and senior in high school, but with middle school writing skills. 1 class period a day for the school year, and they had an increase. What do you think we increased them to?
Let's say, mm, like if I gave it a percentage, probably like sixty,
No,
seventy
what
percent
what what grade do you think we increased it to? Just so you know, the cost was a little under $900 a kid.
probably to the ninth grade, ninth, 10th grade reading level because on
N-
average, what, 6?
Nope, we jumped them to the average range of entering graduate students. We
Uh,
bypassed high school, we bypassed college, and people say, well, can this be real? Dr. Irene Halichka, who was a State University of New York distinguished professor in psychology, the best they had was the grader, and she was vicious. So then I was like, well, how do we do compared to our competition, which was Landmark College at the time? Just so everybody knows, they had a major change in 2013. They're doing great now, but back then, not so much. We were literally less than 1% of the cost. They were over $100,000. We were less than 1,000, and we were 3x as successful as they were. So then I go down to New York City, and I said, I'm cocky because I literally just had these tremendous results. And then I found out 2 little problems. Problem that we had is the professor said, we don't care. We had 2 kids who scored literally in the 70th percentile. They're in grad students from middle school. They said, we don't care. We want the craft of research. And I said, craft of what? The Craft of Research is a book that came out in 1995 that teaches PhD students how to do their doctoral dissertation by showing them how to get everybody on the same page with context, come up with a problem statement that you can do, but actually matters, that people actually care about, which eliminates just about every undergrad and master paper in the country, and then a unique solution. And if you can't do that, they don't care. And I had to teach that to dyslexic high school kids who are dyslexic. And no private school in the country would go near this book. It's too advanced. And yet they wanted all these kids to have this understood before they entered college. All right. And then the teacher said, does this work for normal kids? And I said, absolutely not. And they said, come back when it does. 8 years later, I came back. And I've been teaching New York City special ed teachers ever since. So that's how I got started in this crazy race.
that's amazing. You call yourself the Dyslexia Professor. How did that title come about, and what does it mean to you?
What it means to me is basically how I got started. I'm a New York State Senate funded dyslexia researcher. I literally now do what people say they always wanted. I train parents to teach their
Mm,
kids how to actually get past dyslexia.
mm,
All right. Not sitting in some Ivy Tower writing out, constant peer review article. I'm here to actually do the impossible. Taking parents who have none of this academic training and teach them in some instances 7x faster, teaching their dyslexic kids in a fraction of the time that teachers do. It's a whole new paradigm of being drastically more efficient. It's kind of like what Elon Musk did with kind of a near neck, propulsion systems for spacecraft. He dropped
Mhm.
it 95%. I've done it better with parents. So just to show you kind of like what that is. Do you know any
Mhm.
dyslexic elementary school kids at any point in your life who are writing randomly placed misspelled words?
Yes.
Okay. We need to change the name of this student, this person, to protect their identity. What's the
Mm.
person's made up name?
Jonathan,
Okay. And how old was Jonathan at the time?
7.
Okay. Now, this is key. What is Jonathan's speciality? What is his area of extreme interest and ability?
Storytelling.
Storytelling. What if I told you fixing this is really simple? Will that surprise you?
Yeah, I will
Okay.
say so.
Here's the thing. Let's look at the actual science. This is it. Overcoming Dyslexia by Dr. Sally Shaywitz from Yale. This is the second edition. She's a medical doctor. That's dyslexia. See how the back part of your brain has this massive neural activity?
Mhm.
Back part of the dyslexic brain has next to nothing,
Mhm.
but the front part of the dyslexic brain's like 2.5 times overactive.
Mhm.
Okay. So I got this weird idea. If we want to solve dyslexia, let's pull things from the back part of the brain where nothing's working to the front part of the brain where we have 2.5 times the neural activity. Okay.
Mhm.
Make sense?
Makes sense.
Okay. So the front part of the brain deals with word analysis followed by articulation. So with Jonathan, first thing we would do if you're going to teach Jonathan is pull out a laptop computer with a real keyboard, not an iPad, not an iPhone, and certainly not handwriting. And you're going to type out hero plus sign. What are we talking about? And then Jonathan's going to copy it until it's correct. Then we're going to swap out hero for Jonathan. So we got Jonathan plus sign. What are we talking about? Then we're going to go to a list of 10 things that Jonathan really, really likes, and then
Mhm.
10 things he really, really dislikes. And the first thing
Mhm.
he likes is storytelling. So we got Jonathan plus sign. What are we talking about? We're going to swap out what are we talking about for storytelling. So we got Jonathan plus sign storytelling. Okay, see how we got there?
Mhm.
Now I'm going to ask you two of the simplest questions ever. I do use these with 7-year-olds. These are not trick questions. If you follow them exactly, you will this will work. And if it doesn't, you're going to get really confused and then you have an epiphany in what dyslexia really is.
Okay.
Okay. Do you think I can fool you with two of the simplest questions ever?
Most likely.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. You're in the military. You're working on propulsion systems. You know how you have to follow instructions exactly.
Yes.
I just need you to answer these two simple questions exactly, and this will work.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Ready.
So we got Jonathan plus sign storytelling. Here's my question. We have to replace the plus sign with a word. Does Jonathan like or dislike storytelling?
Jonathan like
You are one of the few people that answers it correctly. Are you now ready for the trap?
the trap. Let's
I
go.
need you to replace the plus sign with that word and give me the 4-word sentence.
You said the
We got Jonathan plus sign storytelling. We have to
okay.
replace the plus sign with a word. I asked, does Jonathan like or
Like yep.
dislike storytelling? You said like. Now I need you
Mhm.
to replace the plus sign and give me the 4-word sentence.
Like Jonathan like storytelling. Are you talking about that or
You realize how weird that is? You
yeah?
actually got that correct. Are you
And
finding
I
that?
really thought it was a trick question.
No, I use
I was
this with
like,
7-year-olds. Okay.
yeah.
Are you wondering why why I was building this up where you're going to mess this up? Do I have you confused that way?
No, no. I thought funny enough, I was trying to think how like where it's funny, I was trying to think like where is this coming from in my brain? Like, like as I'm connecting the plus sign, taking out the plus sign, putting like in there, and then, how does it cognitively, help my brain? I'm just sorry.
No, no,
I
you
was
did
distracted.
great. You did better than professional educators with advanced degrees. Let me tell you what
Go.
normally happens, okay?
Hmm.
Because your audience is
Yeah.
probably really confused right now. Here's what happens. The back part of the brain has massive
Hmm.
neural activity. Jonathan has nothing going on here. So typically what happens is when I asked, does Jonathan like or dislike storytelling? People are going to say likes, or they'll say like and then make it Jonathan likes storytelling. They will add the S. Okay.
Ah.
Just automatically. Jonathan has nothing going on back here. He doesn't know how to add the S.
Hmm.
Okay. So let me explain how this works in elementary school. I want you to think back when you were a kid, and they're probably teaching this this rule to you. If they had to explain it 4 or 5 times, the teacher probably got really annoyed and said, "Why can't you just freaking get this?" Okay? Because you're expected to get it, 1 or 2 times, and that's it, right?
Yep.
And then you got it
Right.
because you have all this neuroactivity. You could explain this to Jonathan 1,000 times and no way is he getting it. Okay. Because there's nothing going on back here. So we have
Mhm.
to move it forward. We have to use a form of word analysis. Why? Well, let's look at the science one more time. 2.5 times the neuroactivity. And we know that deals with word analysis because Dr. Sally Shaywitz from Yale told us. Okay, she's just simply the top person in her field. It's like Einstein telling you about. I'm sorry, it's like the guy who did the rocket to the moon telling you this is how things are. They're the top. Okay, so here's how we apply word analysis to this because it's going to be like that's what Jonathan would have wrote. Jonathan like storytelling. I'd ask Jonathan, read what you wrote out loud. He'd say, Jonathan like storytelling. And I was like, okay, Jonathan, read it out loud and answer this question. Does that sound generally correct? He's going to say, Jonathan likes storytelling. No, it doesn't. Jonathan, fix it. Jonathan likes storytelling. We practice that another 9 times with the likes and 10 times with the dislikes. Do you see how that's a simple form of word analysis?
Mhm.
Now we have to go to articulation. We're going to go because reason one. What's a simple reason why Jonathan likes storytelling? Just
Well, the reason why it sounds grammatically correct.
no. Why does he like storytelling?
Oh, why does he like storytelling?
Yeah. What's
Um,
some simple reason?
Fantasy. It gives him an escape.
Jonathan likes storytelling because it's fantasy that gives him escape. Okay. So, how do we fix the grammar? We ask Jonathan to just read it out loud. Does it sound generally correct? No, fix it until the entire sentence is fixed. He might do that 5, 6 times.
Mhm.
But then we got rid of those nasty grammar mistakes. Now you got maybe some little grammar mistakes, maybe some medium ones. Teachers can deal with
Mm.
that. They can't deal with the horrific stuff generally. It's that simple. Now, could you imagine that it might be kind of hard to correct the spelling because this is going to be a mess spelling wise, typically. Do you think it's that hard to fix?
I'm not sure.
Well, the traditional methods, it's very hard. I'm going to show you how to do it
Is
really
it?
easily. Oh,
Mm.
traditionally? Let me tell you what they would
Mm.
want to do. They would want to take Jonathan and send him to a school like the Windward Academy in the Upper East Side of Manhattan, who are brilliant at it. They would take him for 4 to 5 years, and when they were done, they would send him back where he came from, and he would be as educated as any of the best private schools on the planet for $75,000 a year for the next 4 to 5 years just in tuition. Do you have an extra $500,000 sitting in your couch? Okay, so let's try something that we can actually do. All right.
Yeah.
So, how we would do that is we would tell Jonathan every time he misspelled a word, he had to retype the entire sentence. So, and he's going to say, "Oh, I'm not going to make that mistake," and he'll keep making it for 3 to 13 times. Each time
Mm.
he's going to concentrate harder and harder. That's where the magic happens. Because remember, we're doing word analysis followed by articulation. Now we're in the front part of the brain where we got 2.5 times the neuroactivity. Okay. It's like
Mhm.
people can look at you and just look at you have more of like a more of a football stocky dyed body. All right. If I were to put you in a weightlifting competition, I think you remember a guy you probably graduated high school with who was probably 5'8" and weighed maybe 110 pounds.
Mm.
If I put you in
That
a
was me.
weightlifting regiment with him, who's going to win?
Probably I will.
Yeah, for the next 6 months because your body is designed to just put on muscle mass, and
Yeah.
that guy could be working forever and barely put on anything because he's just, super thin. All
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
My brain is not designed for the back part of the brain. We're in the front
Oh.
part. So with that, things start getting corrected. Okay. And we do that for 10 likes and 10 dislikes for reason one. Then we keep reason one and we add a reason two, 10 likes, 10 dislikes. They have to keep retyping it until everything's perfect. Then we keep the same 2 reasons and add a third reason, 10 likes,
Mm.
10 dislikes. At the end of that, the kid can write decent, decent grammar, correct spelling, 3 reason sentences. But their reading has also improved because if you can read it, I'm sorry, if you can write it, you can read it. If you can write it, you can read it. Does that make sense?
Mm. Yes.
Okay. But that's part 3 of the model. The first part that I found is the most important. I'm just going to tell you about my most motivated kid I ever worked with. I want everybody to know I have never saw this before, Casey. I will never see this again. This is a one-off edge case. Casey was 10 years old. She turned 11 over the summertime near the end of fifth grade. She had a second grade reading level, and she was incredibly interested in Theodore Roosevelt. So I assigned her this little book, The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt. All 900 pages of it. This book won the Pulitzer. Casey wanted to learn to read first, so I said, okay, here's the formula. I didn't ask her to do this. Nobody did. She just did it. She went to her room and decided to study a certain number of hours a week. How many hours do you think she would do in a typical school?
Probably like 4.
Yep. She did about 3 hours a night during the school week. During the summer, it was more like 8 to 10 for 6 months. Doing this exceedingly, because remember, I always do writing first because you write, you can read. I gave her this very simple but very not fun way of learning this. And she just sat down and did it for 6 months. At the end of that, you could flip to this random page, point to that random word, and she would tell you what the dictionary definition is. She jumped 8 grade levels in 6 months, and I worked with her for 15 minutes a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, that's not the point of all this. The point of all this is when Casey's mom wanted to know what would happen when we moved from a book she liked to one she hated. And I did that. And I asked Casey, how much did her motivation drop? Most motivated kid I ever met. Dropped 50%. 50%. Most kids, you step outside that speciality, their area of extreme interest and ability, you're down 75 to 90%. That's why your interventions don't work, okay? So during the intervention period, you have to focus on the speciality. The second one is, this is very important. I want you to imagine, give me a made-up name of your base's commanding officer. Just make it up.
Sally.
If Sally were to come to you, what rank is Sally roughly?
06.
Sally's a colonel.
Full word colonel.
Yeah. Full bird colonel came to you and said, Michael, here's your new assignment. Let me know if you could do this. Your job is to go and write a 9th grade level essay on the following topic. What effect did Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech have on the American Civil Rights Movement of the 1960s? It's to be 10 pages, and you are to take what you deem to be a reasonable amount of time, and there's not anybody that can help you. Can you go to the library and just do it?
Me? Yes, I could.
Yes. Okay. For a dyslexic, forget it. It's like grabbing fog. Because do you remember how you learned about everything, even in the military? You would start off big picture and then eventually get down to the details. Think about when we ask a dyslexic, in their speciality, do you have ideas flying around your head at light speed, but with little to no organization? The answer is yes. So the solution is to force the dyslexic brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. And people ask, can you translate that into English? So here's an example of what we would do in the same situation. We would not ask that question that I gave you. We would ask something very specific and then eventually go out. So what we would ask is, what personally compelled Martin Luther King to want to give his famous speech? Once we found that, we would just go right to his biography. We know exactly what we're looking for. Once we have the answer, that would give us a question, which would give us an answer, which would give us a question, which would give us an answer. That would force the dyslexic brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. Does that make sense? So what we do is during the intervention period, we focus on the kid's speciality, their area of extreme interest and ability. We get them a book and an audio book that is in that they're really interested in, probably a couple of grade levels ahead of where we want, so they can grow into it. We teach them from the specific to the general, word analysis followed by articulation. Now, people ask, how effective is that if the parent does it? So I'd like to give an example of Kimberly. Kimberly is a homeschooling mom that I met on December 27th of 2024. She has some college. She has 5 kids. And a few weeks beforehand, she paid $700 to have the state of Ohio test her kids. Her 4 gen ed kids learned brilliantly how to read at the highest levels using traditional methods. But her dyslexic son, Reed, was 10 years old, reading at the 11th percentile, writing at the 4th percentile. So I worked with her for half an hour a week for the next 8 months. She worked with Reed an hour and a half a week. Most parents do 10 to 15-minute sessions. And at the end of that time, over the summer, his friends said, Reed, we want you in public school to deal with us socially. If Kimberly doubled where he would still have been placed in special ed. But that didn't happen. It was called 8.5 months later. He's in a public school, tested. His reading jumped up to the 64th percentile. his writing to the 65th, his grammar to the 97th. I asked Kimberly a week ago how he was doing. She said she was scoring mainly A's and B's in gen ed classes. Kimberly did everything that parent dreams of. Not 4 to 5 years at a private school, but
Mm.
an hour and a half a week in about 8 months. That's how
Wow.
powerful this is.
Man, to me, I used to struggle. Everything that you was talking about in school, I personally used to struggle in school. My mom worked with me, similar to the stuff you were saying, how to do a word association and different things of that nature. Even coming into the military, like depending on stuff that didn't spark my interest, it was hard to cue myself for. So
Okay.
I totally understand this.
Well, let's see where you actually are. There's three questions I generally ask. Is that okay? Okay. So I want you to think what is it, it doesn't matter which one it is. What is your speciality? What are you really good at? What do you really love? Any one of them is will be fine.
I would say I love researching.
Researching. Okay. So when you're thinking about researching, do you have ideas flying around your head at light speed, but with little to no organizations, anytime in the past or currently?
I would say yes. Yes.
Okay. So that tells me you are probably ADD, ADHD, or mildly dyslexia, at least one of those three. Let's see if you're really dyslexic. I want you to think you want to write something about research. It's in your head. Fingers, keyboard. Fingers, keyboard. The idea's in your head. You take your fingers, put them on the keyboard. Does the idea fly out of your head, leaving you with an empty brain? Is that you or not really?
Somewhat. So I have the idea and it's hard to quantize it. So
No.
sometimes what I have to do like I have to like make a mental net and try to
Mhm.
keep stuff.
Okay. Now, when you were in elementary school, did they ever threaten to hold you back because you couldn't pass some tests?
Yes.
Okay. So when they threatened to hold you back, did you then become extremely scared because you're going to lose your friends, extremely frustrated, put so much pressure on yourself that it was mentally dangerous? And then voila, you had an epiphany and you were able to barely pass the test. And that happened again and again. Sound familiar? Do you find that it's weird that I know that about you?
Yes.
Okay. But just so everybody understands, I'm not talking about a little bit of stress. You were piling on so much stress that if
Yeah.
a mental health professional knew that you were thinking probably along the lines, if I don't pass this test, my family will disown me. I will lose my friends. Nobody will like me anymore. And you put so much pressure on that they actually knew how bad this was. They might have probably checked you into a mental emergency room because there was so much pressure. Sound
I
familiar?
used to I used to have high blood pressure as a kid. Like
Because
bad.
the amount of
Bad.
pressure you put yourself on these things was so horrific. It
Yeah.
was damaging you physically. And this happens so often that by the time you were in high school, this is just normal.
Yep.
Okay. Again, now do you find it's even weird I knew that much about you? Now, do you remember? Now, I just want to let you know and your audience know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's dyslexia. And you were essentially, remember that web you were talking about creating?
Yeah.
You started doing that. How old were you? 7, 8, 9? How old were you?
When I actually probably in high school when I started like trying to grab hold to it. And it got better when I came in the military, but I was still bad at it through high school.
Right. But you were essentially doing graduate level work in high school.
Yeah.
That's what grad work is. It's coming up with a solution that matters, that is original. That's what you were doing. So, do you remember that massive study that I told you happened? All those
Mhm.
increases? When I talked to the kids afterwards, they were all like you. And I knew that going in because when the teacher said she spent almost no time on spelling and grammar, and they went from disgusting middle school, and I mean bad, to clean at the grad level. And the teacher said she spent almost no time on it. It's because I knew they went through something you went through, something I went through, and that they would just know how to fix it as they're going through that process. Okay. So I want to let people know what you went through that only happens to the very best of us. Okay. So are you ready for me to tell you some more things about you that are really obvious now? You are an E7 in the military. Can you kind of explain to the audience how hard it is to get there?
It's very difficult. Now it's more politicized, but before it used to be with testing. So you had to take 2 tests for each promotion rank, and it was a weighted tests, so different questions weighted differently. And so most people back in the day, when especially when I joined, those individuals usually used to retire roughly at an E5 or E6. Like
Hmm.
that was natural in my career field and just in general. So it's very difficult to become a senior and listed non-commissioned officer.
Yes. Now, when you're looking at this, not only are you good at what you do, but you are exceedingly brilliantly good at it. Would that pretty much fit the bill?
I don't like the boast, but yes, I do think do a good job.
Yes. Okay. Now, isn't it also very natural for the military? Because there's not that many senior positions as you get up the flagpole. Like with officers, I know it takes forever to go up major, lieutenant colonel, colonel, but when they hit flag, then if they're going to get promoted, it promotes a lot faster. Okay. So for what you're doing, don't they generally try to push guys out around the year 20 so they can retire? Because like most officers get out at lieutenant colonel, a few will make
Yeah,
colonel, and then you're gone because there's no way you're making flag.
yeah,
Same with enlisted, I would take it. Getting promoted to E8's really hard.
it is.
Okay.
It's very
All
much.
right. But in your would you call this your speciality, your area of extreme interest and ability, your job in the Air Force?
Yes.
Okay. We have a natural ability to do this because we have 2.5 times the neural activity. And the person that says yes to question 3, I want you to know, let's go back and just examine what happened. You had some test. I don't know what it is. I don't care what it is. No adult could help you. You became so incredibly mental, I would call it mental torture you were putting yourself through to get past this. And then the epiphany formed and you passed the test. Okay. How old were you when that happened the first time?
First time, I believe it was in elementary, and then later in well, so I guess Florida, you have to take a test, a cognitive I think it was a cognitive test in reading, writing, and arithmetic in elementary.
Mhm.
You had to do another one in middle school, and then you had to do the final, test, I forgot what's it called, in, high school. Yeah.
Okay. Now, yeah, but it happened, but you were what, 7, 8 when you did this initially?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what I showed everybody, I showed you how to do sentences, which is great when you're like 7 years old. But
Mhm.
what happens when you're a junior, like a middle school kid, a junior or a senior, or you're in college? Do you understand that the biggest problem you're running into is how to write evolved body paragraphs? Okay. What if I told you I can show you in a couple of minutes how to fix that so people didn't have to go through the hell you went through?
Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead. Yeah,
No, no,
that's
because seriously, when I'm looking
yeah,
at this,
yeah.
there is no need to put a child through this.
Mhm,
I will do lighter versions with some people. I
mhm.
have 2 requirements. You're 18 and you freaking graduated from high school. Okay? And
Mhm.
then we would do it on a limited basis, nothing like what you put yourself through. There's
Mhm,
no need to torture us for that. And that's literally what it was. Okay? So here's what we do. We're going to do an
mhm.
advanced form of word analysis followed by articulation. To do an evolved form of writing with a rule that I'm out of PhD candidates, I found 2 people with master's degrees that even knew what it was. So this would even help you improve your writing. All right. So first thing, I want you, and this is going to come out of like left field, but that's what dyslexics do. And then let me guess. Have you had a lot of things where what your ideas for improvements came out of left field, but they actually worked? And then you're like, why do I have to take forever to explain this? Why don't they just get it? Sound familiar? Okay. So here's another one. We're going to start off with a movie review. This will make sense in a moment. I want you to tell me about a movie that meets 3 criteria. First, you think it's one of the best of all time. Secondly, you know it intimately. And number 3, everybody's seen it. What's the name of that movie?
The Matrix.
The Matrix. Which one?
I would say the first.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask you a really hard question. I need you to reduce the matrix to a one word universal theme that you think best represents it. What's that one word universal theme?
Internet?
Nope. We need something that is unique from you. Remember, this is really freaking hard.
One word that
One word
represents
universal theme that best represents the entire movie.
I would say evolution.
Excellent. Now, do you see how long that took you? Now, when you're thinking about the word evolution, do you think that's a good universal theme?
So yes, I would say
Yes,
yes.
I think it captures a lot of the complex part. Let me show you what actually happened. Let's go back to the science. You got 2.5 times the neural activity up here. For your audience, just so you know, you're now playing in our sandbox. This is where we're really good. I can tell you, I've worked with a lot of people with super high educations, and they would take a lot longer and come up with something not as good. Okay. So now let's go to the point. Let's say we're going to write a movie review about evolution in the Matrix. You would pick your favorite actors that you think were the most consequential and ask, how did they do with the universal theme of evolution? How did the director do? How did the screenwriter do? And we're going to put them all together, and that's our review. People will then decide, do I want to see this movie or not? If they want to see it, you have enhanced their experience because they know what to look for and from whom. But you haven't
Mm,
ruined it saying this happened, then this happened, then this happened, which is what happens in a lot of our top publications and something that I would expect from a sixth grader, not from somebody from the Ivy League, but that's what I get all the time. They ruin it for me. All right. Why am I spending so much time on this? Because I want you to look at the universal theme of evolution. Do you see how broad it is? It's like painting with a broad brush. It's broad. That was great 30 years ago, but now we have to laser focus because things are just much tighter now. You can't laser focus with evolution. We need something much more specific. Now, how do we do that? I'm now going to traumatize a portion of your audience because we're going to go back to high school English and Shakespeare for a moment. Don't worry, it won't last long. Why Shakespeare? Because when it came to communication English, he's the top, period. Does that make sense?
mm,
So let's go back to high school English. And I want you to think of any Shakespeare play. You would have a hero. A hero would want to do something. That would be based on one or more universal themes. And then we would have
mm,
an ultimate villain or an antagonist that's based on that wants to prevent the hero from accomplishing the hero's goals, and that's based on a character or some concept or some combination there too. Does that make sense?
mhm.
How do we simplify that? So, do you want me to explain how to do this as an adult or some kid in school?
I would say less as a kid in school.
Okay. So, this is at a point where I have the only analogy word I have is to say a come to Jesus moment with my clients.
Okay.
No, this is where we literally go or no go. What I
Mhm,
do is I point out to them, and we go back to the brain exam. This massive overact front part of the brain. Yale says this deals with word analysis. I ask them, if you don't know exactly what that word means, how can we do
mhm,
word analysis? You know exactly what that definition is. You
mhm,
can't. I can't go forward with you. So what you're going to do is I say, we are in your speciality. We are going from the specific to the general. We're doing how your brain's designed. Are you going to do the work? Most say yes. If they say no, I have some fun with this. Now, just out of curiosity, are you a parent?
yes.
Okay. Just give me a rough age of one of your kids.
19.
Okay. I want you to think back when they were like 10. Could you ever imagine them going to you and saying, I'm not doing this, Dad. I'm not doing the schoolwork. Okay. Just flat out refusing. Okay. Could
Yes.
you find that kind of hard to believe?
Yes.
Now, I want you to think about your father. Could you imagine ever just looking into his face and just telling him, no, I'm not doing this?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at
But here's my evil way to get them to do it. So
mhm.
your kid, when they were 10, 12, what was the one chore they hated the most?
Washing dishes.
Okay. Remember when I said, give me the 10 things you dislike? The first one's always a chore. So if they won't do the task, you're going to stand over them and you're going to mess up dishes and have them wash it. How long do you think it's going to take until they finally decide to do this instead?
Probably real quick. They like, hey.
Exactly. See how evil I am? But
Yeah.
not only are you going to do that, you're going to take a video of them doing the dishes so later I can laugh with you. And then 10 years
Mm.
later, they're like, that's not funny. And everybody else think, especially with one kid, his fiance wanted to see it. She's like, that is hilarious. She's like, that's not funny. She's like, well, to me it is. So the correct answer is, his dad said, tell her it's funny or you're on the couch. Oh, it's funny. So that's how I get them to do it. Okay. They need to understand if they don't know
Okay.
exactly what the word is, we can't go forward. So I would tell
Gotcha.
them to write out what the hero wants to do. So let's just take your example for the Matrix. What does the hero want to do? Write out as many paragraphs as you can. Then we're going to
Mhm.
take the most important word from each paragraph. The kid's going to type out the word, go to Merriam-Webster's online dictionary, pick their definition, and then type out the definition. Not copying and pasting. Not
Yep.
copying and pasting. At some point as they type out the word and the definition. I don't know if it's five times, 10 times, 20. I don't know. It's some amount of time. That's what Casey was doing for all that time. So when we moved
Mm,
on and I said, thesaurus this word, she would go across. She said, I looked up 217 words in under 10 minutes. I knew what everyone meant. Here's the best word and here's why. And she could have argued that at a university level.
wow.
Okay.
Wow.
So this is how you build up your reading level with words that will stay with you. So 5 years later, when they're doing this for the SATs and they have to study hundreds of evolved words, my kids don't have to because they remembered this when they were in middle school. They remember 70 to 80% of the definition. Okay. So they do that
Mm,
with all the most important words. Okay. From there, you're going to pick the best, most important word, and that's going to be your base universal theme. But like the one that you came up with,
mhm,
okay, evolution. It's too broad. How do we narrow
yeah.
this? We take that term, we put it into the thesaurus, and you can do 5 synonyms, 10 synonyms, the whole level, multiple levels. You're going to type out the
Mhm,
word, you're going to type out the definition, and pick the definition that best matches what's in your head. Now,
mm,
eventually, you're just going to know what that word means because you've done it so many times. And eventually, you're just like Casey, you can do hundreds within 10 minutes. You just know them. Okay. That's your universal thing. But now, since you found one that's
yeah.
very specific, we can now use that as a lens to pick out the best ultimate villain. I start off with
Mm,
people or characters, and eventually I move to concepts. So then we
yeah.
have the hero, the universal theme, and the villain. We add a few words. That's to see how that's an advanced form of word analysis. Don't worry, we're almost done. Now with articulation, we move much faster because the hard work is done. We come up with 3 really good reasons. Then what we do is we look at each reason, we reduce that to a one-word universal theme. Then we would go
Mhm,
to the matrix script. I want a quote, one sentence quote at the beginning of the movie with that universal theme, one at the end. Then we put those 2 quotes together, and that's our data. From those 2 quotes, we then form a topic sentence. Now,
mm,
have you ever noticed that going from the topic sentence to your data, it doesn't flow very well? Have you noticed that? Okay. Now, have you ever thought of applying a warrant to a body paragraph? A warrant
no.
comes from the book, The Craft of Research, the one that I told you about, 95 have sold over 1 million copies. And what
Mhm,
it does, this is a central point. And if you don't know what this is, it's fine. The only people that know what this is are freaking PhD candidates and doctoral students,
mhm,
PhDs. What we
mhm,
do is we connect the topic sentence with the data by we're using the warrant, which is answering a how and why question.
mm,
Okay. Now you practice that. I can tell you, a professor sees, oh, they did a warrant. They think this is a very evolved form of writing.
okay.
And that'll take care of your middle, high school, and into college. And parents ask me, how far do we go? Well, the most advanced student that we're working with now, his name is Grayson. Grayson's
Mhm,
not dyslexic in the least. He's a 99th percentile student in math and science. Grayson wants to get his PhD, work at NASA, to terraform Mars. All
okay.
right. We have to get
Okay.
him to publish. So, to
Yeah.
publish in a peer reviewed journal, we have to get him past a desk rejection, which is where they reject what you did because you didn't meet the specifics of that journal. And we need to get him to a real peer, they're usually university professors. And then it will be rejected. You miss a comma, it'll be rejected. Then on another podcast, I met a gentleman who's on the board of directors of one of the nation's top technical schools. So when the time comes, I'll contact him and say, we've been rejected from a peer reviewed journal. Can you connect Grayson with one of your professors who deals in this area? Grayson will go in and ask the professor, say, I want to publish this article. This is what I need to work on. And can we work together? Now, how old do you think Grayson is?
Well, if he already has that,
We're
I wanna
working towards
say
that. We're starting off with that process I gave you. That's what his parents are teaching him right now. That's where we
probably
have to get him to.
13.
Nope,
13.
Grayson's 10. The
Okay.
material I'm creating for him is at the 11th grade reading level. The context is at the second year college level.
Wow.
We're just racing right towards that goal.
Mhm.
Okay. Because if he doesn't publish, he can forget about it. Once he's published in this particular journal, then he has an excellent chance of doing what his dreams are. So this works for everybody at a
Mm.
really advanced level. Yes. And we covered all of this in under 50 minutes.
Well, man. Well, Russell, thank you so much for being on the show. Is there anything else that you want to, I guess, shine a light on for our viewers and listeners so that they know that dyslexia can be beaten and that you're the man for the job.
Well, I just show you how, but what I want everybody to understand is you are one of the best among us. You've been starting to do
Right.
doctoral level stuff in elementary school. I did that as well. Okay. One thing I want parents to understand is we should not put these kids through that hell. And
Uh,
when I said, honestly, if you knew, if a mental health professional knew how bad this was, they would have taken you and literally put you in the mental emergency room. That's how severe this gets. We don't have to do it this way. I showed you how to do the basic sentences. I showed you how to do a more evolved body paragraph. We
mhm,
show parents to teach them how to do that. The person who does that for us, we're on a learning platform called School, SKOOL.com. Just put in
mhm,
dyslexia classes and you'll find us. Person who teaches this, her name is Angela. I met her she was a producer on another podcast. Her background is she is a certified elementary school teacher in the state of Texas with a master's degree and 10 years of experience. And then when her daughter was born, she became a homeschooling mom. She has taught her son, August, to go through this. She's there
mm,
every week answering questions for an hour. And we make it affordable so parents can actually do this. And parents ask, how long do we go? Well, we take parents, our most advanced student now is Grayson, and we take them all the way through going to publish a journal article. It will be rejected. Our goal is to get them past the desk rejection, rejected by a peer, and then we try to connect them up with a senior professor, and then they take it from there.
mhm. Okay.
Okay. So that's as far as we go. Most of the time, we don't go that far. We'll usually end up at a senior thesis paper that is good for a college senior. And then they know what to do before they go to college. And here's the
Okay.
other little thing. Have you noticed that AI is kind of coming little bit important? Okay. Give you a little hint. If you know how to do the craft of research, I don't care what happens to AI, you will be brilliant at it. And just so
Yes.
people know, when ChatGPT came out with that $200 a month pro plan, December of 24, I bought it that day. I'm one of those people that is more than 10xing my work. I do more than 10 times the work of a person my age with a master's degree. So it's something I spend a half an hour to an hour a day on, 7 days a week, just so I can keep up with it, so I can
Yeah.
tell my kids how to do this. And it is changing so fast.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Thank you, Russell, for joining us on the show, man. Your dedication to this field of study is inspiring, and I appreciate you for showing us how to get past these obstacles and turn them into strengths. Man, it's been deeply and truly insightful. Appreciate your time.
Well, thanks for having me.
No problem. All right, you guys take care. Peace.